All it takes is some internet tech billionaire to come out and make a proclamation and people lose their fucking minds. Yesterday, Mark Zuckerberg did just that. He basically threw the proverbial hand grenade in the room and everybody went crazy. Some people were excited. Some people lost their minds. What am I talking about? He came out and made a proclamation that Meta is taking a new stance in protecting, not violating, but protecting free speech. The vast majority of people are excited and hopeful, but then again, you've got these other people who, of course, want to throw him under the bus, talk about what a piece of shit he is, and of course, give the whole wait and see type of thing. Look, there's one thing you have to do if you're going to identify as a leader, and that is take the emotions aside, put on the critical thinking cap, and take a look at what this truly could represent. Most importantly, as opposed to getting either excited or pissed, most important thing we can do is hold this man accountable, and here's how we're going to do it. What's up, my friends? JT DeBolt with you today for the True Driven Podcast. Podcast for the few, the true, the driven. Those of us who have aligned and united to become the True Driven. And I say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Whatever time it is for you, no matter where you might be tuning in from on the Big Blue Marble, thanks as always for joining me here on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and of course, YouTube, youtube.com/JT DeBolt. YouTube's where I can bring you more diverse information. Lots of different things from posts to videos to all kinds of different content besides just the True Driven Podcast. So make sure you get yourself over there to youtube.com/JT DeBolt. Hit that subscribe button. Stay in the know so you can be the first to know when I drop new content coming at you on a regular, consistent basis. So today's topic, actually a little bit out of cycle. I had a different topic that I was going to bring to you today, but yesterday's news was just too juicy. I couldn't pass it up. Some of you may have seen this. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. You can research it. You can find it all over the place. But Mark Zuckerberg, CEO and founder of Meta, formerly known as Facebook, but now they have different platforms like Instagram as well, came out with a proclamation of 5 changes that they're going to be making, at least 5 that I could note, to the way Meta will protect the freedom of expression, the freedom of speech. Now, for those of us here in the United States, we have the God-given constitutional right under the First Amendment to free speech. But I don't think you have to be that intelligent to note how much that right has been trampled over the past several years. Maybe for a very long time. But it's gotten worse, and it seems to have gotten even more intense and more restrictive over the past, say, 3, 4, 5 years. And what's interesting about it is Mark Zuckerberg himself actually testified, stating that Meta did in fact impede in how they delivered information and what types of information were seen leading up to and all the way through the 2020 election. Now, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you are on politically. It doesn't matter what you believe or who you're in favor of. The fact is that anytime that happens, that is a bad thing for a society like ours. You can't have a free society if we're not able to exchange ideas, thoughts, information freely without any kind of sense that we're going to be restricted, throttled, or in any way harmed. And that's exactly the road we started to go down. And it was interesting because I think if you remember when Elon Musk purchased Twitter, now called X, a lot of changes came about. And that change, just like any change, was met with a great deal of adversity. A lot of people questioned it. A lot of people were very challenged by that. Quite a few people still to this day think that Elon Musk is pure evil because of what he did with X. And I think that's interesting because it tells you a lot about the person, doesn't it? If you are somebody who genuinely appreciates free speech, if you're somebody who genuinely understands the importance of free expression, shouldn't you be on the sidelines cheering as loudly as possible for something like that to happen? It's very odd to me to see people have an adverse reaction to that. But just like when Musk took over X, now we're seeing the same thing from this message from Mark Zuckerberg. So let me just give you a quick rundown. I took a couple of notes of some of the changes that Mark Zuckerberg mentioned were coming to Meta. One was he was talking about replacing fact checkers with community notes. Now, he did say that this was something that they noted from X. They noticed that X got rid of fact checkers. Fact checkers, by the way, are just some random faceless group of people who basically decide that your message is either against policy or whatever. And so they can actually take the not just the post down, but they can deactivate your account for a period of time. Now, you may not think this is a big deal, but if you're seeing it through the guise of some, person that's just sharing a recipe or talking about their kid's soccer game, that would be something in and of itself that would be tremendously disturbing. But now add to the fact that you entrepreneurs out there building your business online, sharing your message, building your brand, using these platforms, all of a sudden, if that's one of your main ways of generating revenue, if your account gets shut down, which many of my clients have, all of a sudden, you're kind of out of business. So when you take fact checkers out and you put community notes in place, what this allows people to do is be able to say, actually, it's been noted that that is not true. And what that allows you to do as the consumer of the information when you see the community note is then use your critical thinking skills and either do the research for yourself or move on from it, instead of having a fact checker tell you what is fact and what is not. I think that's important. The second thing he talked about was simplifying content policies, which was very interesting because a lot of their content policies are very obscure. They have been in the past. Is this within policy or is this outside of the policy? Things like that. Another one he talked about, which is important for you entrepreneurs out there, a new approach to policy violations. I cannot tell you how many times I have posted something, or people that I know, or even my clients have posted something that was immediately tagged, flagged, and taken down by the platform randomly. What's interesting about these two items when he talked about the content policies and the new approach to content violations is these are now going to be human beings handling these things. In the past, it was kind of like a bot. Maybe it was AI, but it was something that was not feeling or thinking. It didn't have a heart or a brain. And so now what they're doing is they're actually implementing this with true human beings that are going to be able to look at this thing and think objectively about, is this actually a violating piece of content, or is this something that deserves to see the light of day? The other thing that he was talking about was bringing back civic content. Now, I encourage you to go watch the actual message by Zuckerberg. He's very clear about this. He'd mentioned that for a while, they were actually listening to users of the platforms, and they were saying, hey, look, all of this political content is getting a little heavy. It's creating kind of a negative experience on the platform. And if you put yourself in the shoes of Mark Zuckerberg, in a way, it kind of makes sense that they would take this approach, because after all, you want people that come to your place of business to have a great experience, right? If you're an entrepreneur, you already know this. That's an easy no-brainer. So from their standpoint, they took the approach, so he says, of basically having a thing where any kind of discourse, if it was a negative thing, it would get taken down or it would get blocked. You wouldn't even see it at all. It's not that it wouldn't get taken down. You just wouldn't be able to see it in your feed. He said, no more of that. We need to have the ability, even with political content, for that to be seen. And he did acknowledge that it won't be perfect. Some things might slip through the cracks. They're going to make an effort, of course, to really look for the obvious things that most people can all agree on. Clearly, things like exploiting children, for instance, or exploiting other people, things that are really negative and dark, being able to have those things be taken down or at least be flagged. But the idea is that it's not perfect. And let's be real. There is nothing perfect about any of this. You've heard me say this before, guys. Don't be perfect, just be awesome. That's a mantra that I live by. It's my own personal saying that I quoted years ago. And the point to that is this. If we're constantly seeking perfection, what that means is we have such tight filters and such tight constraint on ourselves that we can't openly be the best versions of ourselves. We can't truly live a life of excellence because we're too busy trying to avoid the imperfections as opposed to celebrating our differences. And that's what's been going on with this whole crackdown on free speech. And the reason I think what Zuckerberg's doing here is excellent and something to be celebrated. Another thing he talked about, which I thought was interesting, and I think this one this one's probably going to piss quite a few people off. He talked about moving his trust and safety department out of California and into Texas. It's long been noted, and I don't think it's a surprise to anybody, nor is it a secret, that Silicon Valley definitely has a certain bias towards certain types of content and certain types of messaging. Certain agendas get a lot more light than others do. And so in an act of trying to remove that influence, he's moving that department completely out of California and putting it into a place where he feels that the freedom of speech and the First Amendment have more light, have more fresh air to breathe. Whether that's true or not will remain to be seen. The one thing he did state in this message that he put out yesterday that I think is awesome is that he said that they're all about protecting free expression worldwide. Now, here's where it gets a little bit dicey. I'm going to be honest with you. Personally, I have maybe a little bit of trepidation with this, for lack of a better term, and that is this. He said, we will be working with the United States government to ensure that these protections are in place. Now, look, man, if you followed me long enough, you know I love my country, but I hate my government. And that's an old statement coming from people in the, old school way of looking at politics. I just don't love politics, especially identity politics. If there's been one thing that has destroyed our society, it is identity politics, which has been driven by big tech and, of course, legacy media. Legacy media is the scourge of the earth. Absolute vile human beings, less than human beings, if you want to call it that. And so many people have allowed their views to be skewed by big tech. They've allowed their views to be influenced by the glowing rectangles that are sitting on their televisions, right? The perfectly coiffed asshole wearing the fucking tailored suit telling you how to think, what you should believe, saying this person's bad and that person's good. And instead of thinking critically, we're driven through our emotions to follow that. What a fucking nightmare. What a really, truly, true, sad story that is, not just for the United States, but for the world as a whole. So this, to me, was exciting. I thought this was great news. This is a pivot. Now, here's where it gets interesting and where the leadership lesson comes into place. When Zuckerberg came out, he delivered this message, and really there was basically two camps. There was the camp of people that were excited, hopeful. In other words, they had more of a positive reception to the message. And then on the other side, you had people that were extremely negative, throwing all kinds of fucking hate and fire at this guy, talking about what a piece of shit he is, and we'll see, all these kinds of things. And here's my answer to both sides. Act like a fucking leader. I will be honest, total transparency. I have been a major critic, very vocal critic against Zuckerberg for years. I don't trust him any further than I can throw anybody in my whole life. I don't trust him any further than anything. And the whole point to that is that even in that case, we as leaders, you true drivens know I talk about personal responsibility all the time. We have a responsibility to slow the fuck down, use some critical fucking thinking here, and actually see what's at stake here. Imagine if he had not changed course. What if he had doubled down on his previous behaviors? Let me ask you that. Critical thinking requires us to get curious. And one of the most important behaviors of curiosity is asking questions. So I'm going to pose this question to you. What would you rather him do? Would you rather Zuckerberg double down on what he's been doing? Compressing, destroying, trampling on the First Amendment and our freedom of expression? Would you rather that? And for all of you that want to talk shit, what about you? What are you doing to support the First Amendment? Are you coming out on a platform fighting for it? Are you pointing the finger at the people that are attacking it, like legacy media? Or are you supporting them, continuing to stuff your face and watch their show every single night? Those are my friends. No, they're not. And I don't care what channel you watch. They're all fucking against it. So we got to be clear on this. I'm challenging you to think critically about what's being said here. For those of you that are super excited about it, hold on to your pants, because just because he seems to have changed his way of thinking and had a change of heart, just because the dude's rolling BJJ now and hunting and lifting weights and starting to take himself more seriously as a man, does not mean that this can be possibly some kind of a smokescreen. We don't know yet. So what does that mean for any of us? Whether you're super excited or you think the guy's a total piece of shit and you think this is a scam. I'll tell you what, one thing besides the critical thinking piece, we have to hold him accountable. Let's be frank. We just had an election here in the United States. And just like this announcement, that election created a huge reaction from people. Some were very positive, some were very negative. On either case, the question is, what are you going to do about it? If you're negative, if you're upset, you think the world's going to hell in a handbasket, what are you doing to prevent that? Are you complaining, playing the victim, talking about how unfair this is, talking about what a piece of shit that person is? Or are you doing something to make yourself the best version of yourself, leading, showing up and leading your community based on your values, your vision, your mission, and a sense of purpose? It's a really simple challenge. I'm asking a question. Next, if you're excited about it, are you in cruise control now? You just think everything's going to be perfect, everything's going to be fine? Just like this message yesterday from Mark. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to continue to share your message with courage? Are you going to continue to be prolific in how you go about sharing your voice? Are you going to continue to live up to your values? Share your vision. Approach your life with a sense of mission every fucking day and a sense of purpose. And are you going to hold these people accountable? Because just because your side won and just because your champion is showing up with a great message doesn't mean that we let them off the hook. It means we double down on that accountability. It means we double down on leveraging the opportunity, not letting a day go by, not wasting a moment, but rather seizing the moment, seizing the opportunity. That's what it comes down to. I think this is awesome. This is great news. And for those of you that are too busy slinging mud, throwing hate, grow the fuck up. What are you going to do about it? Hold the man accountable, but also celebrate the fact that somebody with a considerable amount of influence is doing something, moving in the right direction, a better direction. Based on his past, we can't think of a better way for somebody to turn course. Maybe he's a changed person. Maybe he's seen the light. Maybe he is really truly about making effective change for the world. Maybe. Only time will tell. But sitting here, wallowing in negativity and just basking in being an asshole is not helping the situation. So it's time for us to grow up. It's time for us to unite. It's time for us to move in that right direction as true drivens. And I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I don't. You're welcome here. I truly mean that. So whether or not you think this is a good thing or a bad thing, that's entirely up to you. But one thing I will tell you is we have swung a pendulum so far to one direction that it's time that we course correct back toward our God-given rights of freedom of expression. This idea that words are harmful or violent, that you can offend somebody, is complete and utter bullshit. It is impossible to offend another person. I can't offend you, and I can promise you, you cannot offend me. Because being offended is a choice. It's a behavior of a victim mindset. For some people, it's a habit to easily be offended, to easily see something and be so off-put. Call it hate speech, call it bigotry, call it anything you want, fascism, all these words that half the time people don't even know what they're saying. Words don't have that power. Words do have the power to empower. They have the power to inspire. They have the power to harm and to hurt. But you know where that power lies? In you. I could say to one person, you are remarkable. You have what it takes. You have everything you need to accomplish anything you want. And one person will go, fuck yeah, JT, let's rock and roll. And another person will say, oh yeah, another motivational hype monster, and get all pissed off and wallow in their negativity and their excuses. I could say, hey, look, the sky's blue. And one person could go, damn, you're right. I haven't looked up at the sky in a long time. And another person could go, how could you be so offensive? I'm colorblind, you insensitive prick. It's all in how we receive the information and what we decide to do with it. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all of that. That's the beautiful thing about the freedom of speech. We have the ability to move. We have the ability to challenge. We have the ability to inspire. And yes, we have the ability to hurt, to harm. But the good news is that each and every single one of us also has the ability and the power to decide what those words mean to us. One thing I tell you guys all the time is challenge everything you hear, even if you hear it from me. I'm cool with that because that's what leaders do. They use critical thinking. They have the ability to be able to receive information and decide if it works for them or if they're going to cast it aside. It's totally okay for you to be online, social media, or whatever, see something you disagree with and flip past it, or get the fuck off the platform and get back on with your life. This whole idea of I need a fact checker to tell me what's fact or what's not. Bullshit. Use your skull. Use your critical thinking skills. Do the research for yourself or move the fuck on. Live your life. That's what true leaders do. But if we have some group, small entity that's controlling what is fact, that's controlling what's seen and what's hidden, who's controlling what's heard and what's silenced, we don't have that. We have lost the ability to create the full picture, to seek out the full picture for ourselves. We can only think critically about what we see, hear, and experience. But if only part of that picture is being presented to us, then it doesn't take long before we're easily manipulated, led like sleepwalkers off a cliff into the abyss. And yes, I know that sounds hyperbolic, but let's fucking think about it for a second. Would you rather have all of the information or just the part that you want to hear? Do you only want to have the echo chamber, or are you willing to listen to other people that have different opinions, different points of view than your own? Remember, just because they say it doesn't mean you have to agree with it. Just because you listen to them and give them space to be heard doesn't mean that you are causing them or telling them that they are right. It means that you're showing up as a leader. You're demonstrating the strength of character and the strength of the mind to be able to receive different information that might be counter to the information that you prefer. And instead of turning it into a big drama fest, you can actually utilize it to create a three-dimensional picture of the world, as opposed to the one-dimensional picture that they want you to have. My friends, this is great news. I'm a huge, huge, huge fan of this message, even though I'm not a fan of the messenger. I will continue to hold Mark Zuckerberg accountable to this. I will continue to not have a wait and see, but rather I will push and see. I'm not waiting on anything. Wait my ass. Dude, I'm fully active in this shit. And so should you be. Share your message far and wide. Share what you believe far and wide. Share it from a place of your values, your vision, your mission, and a sense of purpose. Do it with courage, do it with purpose, and stay driven with that entire message, that mission of putting your message out there. You leaders know how important it is to stand tall against tyranny. I talk about it all the time. Here is a genuine opportunity to do just that. All right, my friends, that's what I got for you today. Make sure you go check out this message from Mark Zuckerberg and create your own opinion on it. Think critically about it, ask those questions, get yourself curious, and more importantly, whether you're for it or against it, hold the man accountable and ensure that we all, every single one of us, continues to have the right to freedom of speech and freedom of expression, no matter what you believe in, no matter where you live. And remember, no matter what course you fly in life, fly high, fly fast, fly far, stay driven.